Hey, welcome back. I'm Daniel from GrowYourMusicStudio.com, and this is Greg from GroupLessons.com. And in this video, we're going to answer a big question. How do you train teachers and assistants to teach and run a group program for you? You know, for many school owners, for many studio owners, this is a huge question. It would make one's career immeasurably better if we could trust our team to run our studio. How much greater would it then be if we could train our staff to run a group program for us? And so a big obstacle to starting scalable groups is the training component. And that's what we're going to look at today. How do we train our staff of a small studio or even a big school to run our group program for us? And to do that, I'm going to talk to Greg, who has a ton of experience in this. So Greg, I'm going to ask you a couple just quick questions at first. Say whatever comes to mind. But first question here, when you began teaching group, did you do it alone?
At the very beginning, I did. Yes, there was supply and demand. And so at the very beginning, nobody knew what I was up to. I just raised my hand. I was like, okay, I'm doing group lessons now. And the few students and families that knew who I was were like, okay, we'll try it. And then I could run it by myself. At the very beginning, but within the first year I was out of space and I had to start thinking about how to train someone else.
Okay, so it was about a year after you started that you began to add others.
It was about 9 months, yeah.
Wow, okay, it grew that fast.
Yeah, it was coming out of our summer camp program, so a lot of people were coming from summer camp, and then so yes, we had several dozen people, and so yes, that's what got us to our numbers so quick.
When you added others, how did that go? Who did you add? Was it an assistant? Was it a full teacher that could teach for you? Maybe describe that a little bit for me.
Okay, it was one of our people that we brought in to help us with summer camps, and she was reliable. She was a great advanced musician. She was a good communicator, and so I was trusting her to do some side things while I taught the main lesson. So I was going to do kind of the heavy lifting. I taught her how to run some review games and some technique exercises with the students, and this was before I had any original tools of my own. I was using other method books. I was trying to use tools that I could just buy at a store, you know, at a music store. Okay, I'll use this book, I'll use this stack of flashcards. And it was low tech at first, and it worked, but I also was keeping a keen eye on everything that could be better because that's where right. I think the original, I'll use the word conception if I can, of what the Piano Express is now. You know, I started to see, okay, this is what exists right now in 2008. What do I need to create to really make my vision match what I can do on the floor?
Of course, we have covered that in a good amount of detail in videos and even a podcast episode we did over the last month or two. And so we're not going to necessarily focus on the intervening time and what you did to scale this up and get it to 300 students being run up per week and et cetera, et cetera. I want to cut forward a little bit, let's say to the end of that next decade. So like 2019, you've got a lot of students, you've got a number of teachers working for you. And I remember one of your very first teachers who was working for you, Peter Kim, way back in the day. And, and you had a series of teachers that, worked with you over that 12 years and now going on 14 years. I'd love to dig into a little bit on the training side. And here's why. Because the main problem that mid-size and large-size studios encounter is the hiring problem. I spend a lot of time every week doing what I'll call owner therapy for studios that need lots of teachers. They struggle to find qualified people. They struggle to keep teachers. And, just talking about the numbers here, a lot of times that can eat away 40, 50, 60, 70% of a studio's margins right off the rip. Right. And on top of that, there's this constant need as the studio gets bigger to be in hiring mode, in recruiting mode all the time. I know that's not something that you've had to be in all the time. You only occasionally have to be in that mode. For schools that have 10, 15, 20 teachers, it's an almost constant need.
Wow.
So what I would love to hear from you right now, because I know that you've been removed from that for the last 10 years, maybe before we even get into how to hire and train these teachers to run a group program for you, tell me about the staff makeup of your studio. How many teachers? How many assistants? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay. So just the numbers. Our student-teacher ratio in our group lessons is 1:6 max. Okay, so our teachers can see 6 students at a time. But we also hire teacher assistants. So before the students go in to see the teacher, they spend another 30 minutes working on their songs with our software. And so that's also a 6-to-1 ratio. There's 2 rooms. And so students will spend 30 minutes in each room. So although the students have a 1-hour lesson, our student-teacher ratio is 1:6. But since we have 2 stations, one teacher can see up to 12 students in an hour. So I am one of those teachers. I hire one other teacher to teach in a room right next to me. And so together we can see up to 24 students an hour. We hire 2 teacher assistants. So there's me, I hire 1 teacher, 2 TAs, and we also have a 3rd person working at the front desk. And so an administrator. So I have a staff of 4, but then in a 2.5-hour span of time, we can see over 50 students. Easy.
Wow.
Oh, I was just going to say, we didn't clearly spell this out, but yes, one of the reasons why I do feel like I've been removed from constant hiring is group lessons. I mean, I have it all I have a successful group lessons model to thank for saving my sanity when it comes to staffing, because this is something I don't think a lot of studio teachers, this is something I don't think a lot of studio owners think about right away. Like, what can group lessons do for me? But a staffing solution should be right up there at the top. It's like, if you are tired of constantly looking for new staff, think about the possibility of group lessons, because it is a rescue from that.
I think one question before I begin to really ask about the training, one other question I have: how challenging was it to get teachers to understand your Piano Express system? So, I think of Peter, Julian, Ashanta, Jody, the number of teachers I've known of yours over the years. How challenging a process was that for them to be fully up to speed and could run a class on their own?
Well, when we're still probably a mid-sized studio. And so training teachers here on location is as simple as, okay, you're going to start in 2 weeks, but I want you to come start watching and observing classes. So I would have my students, I'm sorry, I keep saying students. I would keep having my staff, my potential staff, come in. They would observe classes. I did have, even years ago, a PDF document that had all of our lesson plans written out. And so I would give those lesson plans to my potential teachers, study these lesson plans, watch a few of these classes, and then, I would trust them to run it. And that's how we did things for several years, and it more or less worked. There's always a learning curve. I think that new teachers, they get more confident over time, and so I would expect, I always have the bar set high for my staff. I expect good things, but I would expect over time the bar to get higher. So I wouldn't expect the highest bar on day one. It's like, okay, you need to be able to manage this class. These children need to be educated. Parents, everyone needs to be happy. That's where we start, and then you grow from there. And it works. Okay.
You said there was about a 2-week period. How many classes would they attend? Do you remember? I know it probably varied from person to person, but what do you feel was a comfortable number?
I think that they would come maybe once or twice a week for 2 weeks. And so maybe just attending 4 observation days, because after a while you see the classes and you're like, okay, this is how you do class control. This is how you unpack, here's the lesson plan. Like I would put the lesson plan in the teacher's lap and I was like, watch this lesson plan as I teach it. And they started to see the correlation. Okay, here's what's on paper. Here's what I see happening in the room. And you see that enough times in enough classes, then, they get it. Okay.
You also mentioned some printed materials. You said originally there was a PDF. Has that grown since then? Do you do anything? Have you expanded that training system, since then? I'm not necessarily trying to lead you anywhere. I'm just curious if you have.
Sure. Well, what did they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So now that we're in a phase where we are trying to get the Piano Express to grow beyond Northern Virginia, I am now facing the challenge of how do I train teachers who I might not be able to meet, so teachers who can't just sit in one of my classes. And so the short answer is yes. I think maybe by nature, whenever I set out to do something, I always go for I go all out. And so our training materials are now, they've evolved into an online course. So yes, there is still a PDF document that will show you, here is every lesson plan, here's what you say. But we also have now audio files of me just talking about what I feel are the important concepts at each level. We have, yes, there we go. There it is. We have, if you click on, say, method books, each one of those is an audio file that's between 5 and 15 minutes long that'll just talk about concepts. But then beyond that, if you go back to the top, we have observation videos. Some of the, I brought my staff together. You would go all the way back up to classroom. Click on that, and then observation videos on the right. Yeah. So I brought all of my staff together, and I said, look, I'm going to run a mock class for every lesson plan that we have. We're going to video record it. I'm going to unpack. Here's what I say. Here's why I'm saying it. Here's what I think is important. And so we go through all of that. And so any teacher that wants to train to be a Piano Express teacher, there is I'll use the word wealth. There is a wealth of material. Yes, it's way beyond a PDF file at this point.
Yeah, and now you run your own team through this now.
I do. Yeah. So when I want to train new teachers, right now, actually already this morning, I am hiring a new teacher this fall for my fall semester, and so I'm sending him the link to our online course. It's like, watch these videos, listen to these audio streams, and if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, here's the books. Go. And it's training. The more you automate, the better it gets. It's like the more that happens, that I don't have to be the legs making the legwork happen. It's like there's tools that can do it.
Yes. And as you're hiring these teachers, you're checking to make sure that that when you give them these tools, when you give them these lesson plans, that they're already a competent enough teacher that you have a reasonable assumption that in 2 weeks they could be in the classroom teaching these concepts as well. Which, I mean, it's basic musical knowledge, but you're checking for their ability to effectively and confidently deliver these lessons.
Right. Okay. So, if you want to talk about screening, like what do I do before I offer someone a job? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look for subtle things. I know that this person needs to be a competent musician. And so, we have standards. It looks good on paper if all of our teachers have music degrees. And so we try to do that. And most of the time we can say that we do. We want our teachers to have a degree. But I don't feel like that's the most important thing. I know that teacher also needs to be liked by parents and children alike. And so there has to be a good vibe. I want I pay attention to eye contact with me and the teacher. Like, I pay attention to their overall demeanor when they communicate. You know, I want the teacher to be a confident communicator, and we want people that are upbeat, warm, friendly, and a measure of self-confidence. And so I'm looking at least on the level of performance, you know, when it comes to teaching and performing, not piano performance, but I mean the performance of teaching a class when you perform the lesson plan, and so those are subtle things that I'm looking for. So right from the first moment when I meet the teacher, I'm just trying to get a vibe. You know, is this teacher the kind of person that's going to connect with the families that are already here at our studio? I would say to any studio owner that's hiring, always try to get more interviews than you have positions to fill, so you have choices. And I would say another thing, we've talked about the idea of a studio owner being able to leave for a day or a weekend or even a week, you know, and leave things in the hands of your staff. Don't hire any one of your teachers to the point where they're maxed out. Like if a teacher says, I can only work 4 days a week, personally, I would want to hire that teacher then for 3 days, not 4. Because then anytime I ask that teacher, can you sub? Their answer's like, no, I already told you my limit's 4 and you hired me for 4 days. And so if you want flexibility, give your staff, of course, enough days where they're content with their work. You don't want to give them such a small job that they need to go look for work elsewhere, but don't max everyone out, because then when you ask for subs, the answer across the board is going to be no.
Wow. That's so simple, but so elegantly stated. I love that. That's great. Mm-hmm. So those are the teachers. And I personally know that the last 2 rockstar teachers you hired were both in their mid-20s and have just done amazingly well. But let's actually go now to the teacher assistants, because I know in your studio you have teacher assistants that are even high school age. You've had college-age teacher assistants. Tell me about that. Was it a challenge to get them to perform well in your school? Give me the good, bad, and the ugly. Does it work well? I'm curious.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you something, some personal information about me. Okay, so I grew up in Pittsburgh. Okay, I grew up in the Pittsburgh area. So to this day, I'm a pretty big Steelers fan. And so I have, it's hard for me to say anything good about the New England Patriots. All right. But you have to give respect where respect's due. I think Bill Belichick is a genius. Okay. And they interviewed one of his players and they said, what do you think is the secret to Bill Belichick's success? How does he win so many games? The first thing that player said is, Bill never asks us to do anything that he knows we can't do. And that was the first thing out of his mouth. I was just like, so simple. Like, I think the biggest winners in life are the ones that can just really just master basic things and stick to simple principles and execute. And so I would say with my TAs, my success has largely been, I never ask them to carry more than they can. I know that they're high schoolers. So what is their job? Their job is to make sure that the students on their side of the room are focused. So every 15 to 30 seconds, look around the room, make sure you see hands in position, eyes on the music, right? Look at the hands, look at the eyes. Every 30 seconds, stay alert. And so, if you see this, it's like, then redirect. You say, Greg, can you please put your hands back in position? Oh, yeah. Right? So easy job.
Interesting.
We have flags, okay? A student is supposed to hang a red flag if they have a question. You go over, you listen to their question, you answer. Usually it's, where are my hands supposed to go? What's my hand position? Or why is the software giving me a low score? How do I get a higher score, right? So then there's the decision. There's a discussion. There are green flags. That means I just got a passing score. I want someone to stamp the score on my page. High schoolers can do that, right? Would I ever ask a high schooler without a music degree to be the one that's solely responsible to get a beginner to lay down the foundation, firm fingers, flexible wrists, the technique that's going to be the bedrock for their entire lifetime of music? No. That is not the TA's job. That's why we have another room. That's why we have a discovery room. And so I do have training materials, again, part of our online course that you had on the screen a few minutes back. Part of that is devoted to TAs. So we have specific training. Here's what a TA needs to know. But we limit their role in a very strategic way to make sure that they can do what we ask them to do.
How do you find those high schoolers to hire?
Okay. A lot of them are homegrown now. So I'm in the lucky position where we've been established for 10 years and we've had our grade schoolers go through middle school and now they're in high school. Enough of them are advanced pianists. Enough of them have these fond memories of their days as a beginner in our group lessons. And when we ask them, do you want to come be one of the teacher assistants? They're like, me? Really? You know, we have a lot of people that are just more than excited, more than happy to say yes. But I would also say it helps a lot to network. I know that studio owners have a lot on their plate, and so it's a big ask to network with other teachers. But me personally, one of my secrets to success is I am very involved with my local chapter of MTNA, that's Music Teachers National Association. Our local branch is NVMTA, Northern Virginia Music Teachers Association. I volunteered to be the chairperson for used book sales. Okay, that means that can you see any of the boxes? They're underneath. There's boxes underneath that grand piano right now. I moved aside. They're not in the camera, but I could drag. I'm not going to do it, but I could drag them out box after box after box. That's where we hide them. But I bring those. My job is just to bring those boxes to events. They're all books that teachers have donated. We resell them. We use that money then for the organization. But in the process, I meet a lot of teachers. I have a lot of conversations. People know who I am. Everyone that's on the high level of NVMTA, president, vice president, treasurer, they all know who I am. They're happy that I'm doing what I'm doing. So if I ever have a small request, if I ever say, hey, can you pass the word around and let them know I'm hiring? Does anyone in town have high schoolers? I have always gotten between 6 to 10 people, young people come through my door on one request. And that is just a testament to the effort that I've put, and it does take effort. It takes time. I have to go to events. I have to, exactly what we're saying, I have to hire a sub to stand in and teach my class so I can go to a Sonata festival and sell books. That's a net loss on that one day, but I'm connecting with my teachers and I have the benefits then of a strong network.
Yeah, but I would also say that, yes, that is the loss of a day. But at the outset of this interview, I was talking about that owner therapy that I'm doing on a weekly basis for school owners who struggle to get recruits or get a lot of recruits or get qualified recruits for their school. How much better is it that you're actually contributing to the musical community and building that network as opposed to spending a ton of time just trying to beat the bushes or put up Craigslist ads for teachers? Like,
yes.
It's just interesting that the strategy that you've taken to build that network and thus solve your recruiting problem actually is contributing to the local music culture as opposed to just being time spent alone in your office trying to drum up recruits. I don't know. I just think it's probably a more productive way to build that healthy network. I think we're drawing to a close here. You already alluded to this earlier, that it is possible for you to leave these people by themselves. Like, you even have a second location now that's being run by someone in their mid-20s. You've got students being recruited there. Sometimes you're not even meeting those. I mean, all the time you're not meeting those students. They're doing that recruiting. You've got that person running that location. You've got TAs at that location. Clearly, this system works. Is there any other last thoughts that you would put out there, last bits of wisdom that you would impart around this topic of hiring, training teachers to run group, maybe something you thought, I thought we'd get to this somewhere in here, but here's this one thing. I'm curious if there's any thoughts you'd give, Greg.
I'm just going to go back and double down on what I said at the beginning. Being replaceable, being able to leave and put a babysitter in charge of your baby. It is something that takes time. Realistically, it doesn't happen overnight, but you have to be committed to the work that it takes. Just like in parenting, you have to have a child that is not going to drive every babysitter right back out the door, and so you have to invest time as a parent. You have to be, I have to do the parenting thing so that I have a child that is ready for babysitter to stand in. And I would say with your own business, it takes effort, it takes focus, it takes presence to make yourself replaceable. And there's so much psychological resistance that is in all of us with that there's a little bit of, I think the big one is just the pride. It's like, I know how to do this job and I do it well. And if I let someone else do it, they might not do it as good. That's a psychological barrier that you just have to just hold your breath and just jump into the deep end of the pool and take the plunge and see what happens on the other side. What it might look like the first couple of times is the first time parents get a babysitter. You have your phone in your pocket. You're checking it every 10 minutes. I was at the beach with my family, but I had my phone. I was always checking. It's like, was my TA able to log in today? I'm not at the studio to make sure. Was there tech issues? But let it happen. Even if if it makes you uneasy, let it happen, because there is freedom on the other side. But not just freedom, but I think even more importantly, there is a new level of scalability. Your business can grow bigger than you if you get out of the way and start teaching people who are qualified to do exactly what you do. The next level of growth largely depends on the studio owner having the courage to make themselves replaceable.